What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Televised Podcast. My name is Anna, and this week is going to be another deep dive episode into the one that I talked about last time, which was going over the reviews of Supergirl, all the ratings, like the audience ratings on IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes scores, stuff like that. You guys seem to be interested in that, so here we are. There's not much updating to do. We haven't gotten too much Supergirl news since the last time that we were here. But we did get a quote from Jessica Queller that said that Kara and Lena's friendship will be the emotional core of season 5, which I'm very interested and intrigued by. I'm very, very, very intrigued to see how this season pans out with everything that we have to deal with, because we have to deal with Leviathan, we have to deal with Kara and Lena, and then we also have to deal with Crisis. So I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued to see how this all plays out. Especially because she said it's going to be the emotional core of the season, which that means it's not going to be the main focal point or the main storyline or anything. It'll just be this underlying issue that we deal with the whole entire time. So I'm very interested about that. But anyway, I think that's really all that we got. So let's just jump right in. So I'm going to start with the top 11 highest rated episodes of Supergirl according to IMDb's audience scores. If you don't know, you can go on IMDb and you can make an account and you can rate each episode on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being the worst and 10 being the best, obviously. And I chose 11 because there's a tie. There's a 3-way tie at the end, so there's 11. But I think this list is really, really interesting, and I'll get into it a little bit after I read the list. Okay, so first, number 1, highest rated episode of Supergirl with an 8.9 is Season 3, Episode 8, which is Crisis on Earth X, Part 1. This is no surprise. This is not shocking. As I talked about in the last episode, and as you'll see, there is a crossover curve. Whenever there's a crossover going on, whether it's a little crossover or like Crisis, it's a huge event, there's always a higher rating. I guess just because all the Barry Allen's in the episode, I don't know, but there's always that curve on those episodes. As you could see also with number 2 at an 8.8, which is 118, Season 1, Episode 18, World's Finest, which is the one where Barry ends up on Earth 38, and it's that great line where Cat Grant says, "All of you standing there, you look like the non-attractive yet non-threatening racially diverse cast of a CW show." It's great. It's one of my favorite episodes from Season 1. It has such great... So I understand why it's up here. I don't believe that the only reason is because it's a crossover episode. I think it was really genuinely a great episode. But it is interesting to see, as you'll see, all these crossover episodes. Number 3, with an 8.7, is Season 1, Episode 16, Falling. I'm surprised that that's not higher, because I think really, at least in the fandom, I guess, it's regarded as genuinely one of the best episodes of Supergirl, especially, higher than Crisis or whatever. But again, that crossover curve is real, and when Barry Allen's in your episode, it's going to be higher. But yeah, because Falling is the Red Kryptonite episode where Kara's inhibitions and they're gone, and every bad thought that she's ever had comes to the surface, and it really genuinely is it's just such a great performance from Melissa. So I don't know, I guess number 3 is a really good spot to have it at. Number 4 is kind of a surprise for me, at least, with an 8.5 is Season 3, Episode 9, which is called Rain. This was the Season 3 mid-season finale. This is the one where Kara almost dies, where Rain beats her to a pulp. And yeah, it's a great episode, but I am just a little shocked that it's rated so highly. Oh my god. But we do have a 3-way tie with the 8.5 rating. Number 5 with also an 8.5 is season 4, episode 9, which is Elseworlds Part 3. And like I said, it's a crossover. It's gonna be up here. And I think another thing is that, like, with the crossovers, it draws more people who don't always watch Supergirl to rate these episodes, because, like, oh, if you're a fan of Arrow and you watch the crossover, then you're gonna, like, go and rate every single crossover episode. You're not just gonna rate Arrows. So I think that's really probably why you have more of a reach to a wider, broader audience than any of these other episodes. But also there's another tie, or number 6, also with an 8.5, is season 4, episode 16, which is The House of El, which is the Red Daughter episode, which I loved. I think, again, one of the best episodes of Supergirl. It was just so good. Like, the way that they unraveled the whole Red Daughter storyline in that episode was amazing. I thought it was really, really good, and so I agree that it's up there. Number 7 also has an 8.5, and it is season 4, episode 22, The Quest for Peace, which is the season 4 finale, and I agree as well. I think that the end of season 4 was genuinely some of the best episodes of Supergirl, like, literally ever. Like, the last maybe 10 episodes, maybe like 8 episodes of Supergirl this season were just phenomenal, like, seriously. And yeah, I just genuinely think that they were so, so good. So I think they all deserve to be up here. Number 8 with an 8.4 is season 2, episode 1, The Adventures of Supergirl. And I think that's interesting that one's up there. I think it's definitely has to do with Superman, probably. And also, again, I feel like it was like carryover from the audience that CBS gave Supergirl, because it's no secret that after Supergirl moved from CBS to the CW, it lost a whole lot of viewers just because of the amount of people that watch each network. But episode 1 of season 2, I think, still had a lot of those old CBS viewers that maybe were like, you know, maybe I'll see if this is good, and you know, kind of hung around, so it allowed more people to rate this episode. But, you know, I could be totally wrong. But then we have a 3-way tie again. Number 9 is with an 8.3 is season 3, episode 6, Midvale. Again, one of my favorite episodes of Supergirl. It is so good. It is so well done. If Supergirl is not good at anything else, they're amazing at casting. Those girls that play young Kara and young Alex are phenomenal. They look exactly like them. They just act the best. Oh, it's so good. It's such a good episode. And I wish that they would do another one. I really do. And then number 10, again with an 8.3, is season 4, episode 15. It's called Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Again, this is another one from the end of season 4. People really, really like that one. This is the one where, I think this is the one where Lena gets kidnapped by Lex, and we find out that Eve betrayed Lena, and, you know, she says that, you know, Lena's like, how long? And Eve's like, forever. And yeah, it's great. Number 11 with an 8.3 is season 4, episode 21, Red Dawn, which, again, is the one, it's the almost season finale of season 4. And for every season, there's an IMDb average audience rating for each season. For season 1, it's a 7.8. For season 2, it's also a 7.8. For season 3, it's a 7.6. And for season 4, it's a 7.5. And I think it's really interesting how many episodes of season 4 are on this list, like, as the highest rated episodes. Like, especially since season 4 overall has the lowest rating, like, has the lowest average rating, but there are, hold on, 5 season 4 episodes on this list. Holy crap. That's insane. Like, 5 whole episodes from season 4 are on this list, but it has a lower rating than overall than season 2, which only has 1 episode on this list, and that was the premiere, like the the opener. Tonally inconsistent and feeling like just like it was kind of a mess. But I think they really pulled it together at the end of season 4. Like, they figured it out somehow. The mess that they created, they figured it out. So I guess that's why, because all of these season 4 episodes are from episode 15 and later, except for Elseworlds, which, again, crossover curve, which there's every single crossover episode is on this list except for Medusa, but that technically does not count as a crossover episode. It was the start of Invasion, quote unquote, but it literally was just 2 minutes of Barry Allen and Cisco Ramon at the end. So I really don't count that as a crossover episode. But it is really interesting to just see all of these crossover episodes be on here. But like I said, I genuinely think it's because it just drives more people to rate the show than they normally do. And I think that, especially with Crisis on Earth X, the way that they're doing crossovers now is not like an episode of Supergirl. It's like they made, especially with Crisis on Earth X, they made a 2-hour movie. They made a 4-part movie, basically. It didn't have Supergirl's tone. It didn't have the same, like, it didn't feel like an episode of Supergirl. And that was what they were striving to do. Mark Guggenheim had said that he felt that Invasion didn't work super well because they were trying to make each episode feel like an episode of the show. Like, oh, we need to make the Flash episode feel like an episode of the Flash, and we need to make sure that the Legends one is a bit goofier than the other one, and we need to make sure that the Arrow one is a bit darker than everything else. And I feel like that just, he agreed that just like did not work as well as it could have. So with these new crossovers, they're just like, we're writing a story and the whole thing is going to have one tone, and is not, we're not going to try and mishmash them into the individual shows. We're going to make it one cohesive story. So that's, again, another interesting thing about this Crisis being number 1, is that, it's not really an episode of Supergirl. It's just part 1 of the crossover. So really, like, World's Finest, which, again, is a crossover episode with Barry Allen, really is like the number 1 episode of Supergirl. And I think another common thing about this list is that special episodes are where Supergirl thrives. Special episodes of the show. Like Falling, which again is the episode where Kara was under the influence of red kryptonite. So again, it was kind of like a little bubble episode where she was in, it was different, it was special, it was about Kara, but she was different. It feels like it was about a different character. Same thing with the House of L. Again, it was about Red Daughter. We didn't see a whole lot of like real Kara. We saw a lot of Linda. We saw a lot of Red Daughter. And then same thing with like Midvale. Again, like we didn't see a whole lot of like Kara. We saw young Kara, young Alex, all of those people, in the episode, instead of a regular old episode of Supergirl. I think kind of the same-ish situation with like Adventures of Supergirl, because Superman was in there for the first time. So I think that's really interesting that they're just so successful with these like little kind of pocket episodes where it's like we're telling a different story for like, one episode, but it's like it ends up being like really, really, really successful, which I don't know. I think that's really interesting that they're better at writing like standalone-ish different like special episodes than they are at their own show. But maybe again, that's like people are like, oh, this is different, this is new, this is fresh, let's give it a higher rating. Like who knows. And then another thing, unfortunately, Supergirl has yet to hit the 9 rating. Has not hit a 9 out of 10 ever in its whole time being a show. which is really sad and really interesting. Like I said earlier, IMDb is a really great place if you want to rate each episode of the show. And it actually, it might help the show out because, the CW as a network does a lot of things, and it doesn't really look at ratings as critically as other networks do, especially because I know that Katie Lotz had said that, or someone from Legends had said that in terms of Legends of Tomorrow, they really pay attention to how many people are live tweeting with the hashtag, hashtag Legends of Tomorrow while it's airing, and how people are rating things online, and especially streaming on their app, that helps better than the actual ratings. So if you do want to help the show out, you can, you can go on IMDb and rate it. I mean, you don't have to be glowing about it, but be honest with your thoughts about the show, and it might help the show out. Also, I saw a lot of hype about season 4, and for it to be rated lower than season 3 on IMDb is really surprising to me. So maybe if we all go on there, we can change that. We can get season 4 to be higher than season 3, because I genuinely feel like season 4 was a good season, and it's rated really low on all of these things. So maybe we can change it. So now we're going to the Rotten Tomatoes segment of this episode. I think what's really interesting about Rotten Tomatoes is that you get the critics' ratings, and then you get the audience rating as well, because on IMDb it's just user ratings. It has nothing to do with real TV critics. It is just the audience rating the show and users of IMDb rating the show. But on Rotten Tomatoes, you get both. You get the critics and the audience scores, which is really, really interesting. So on Rotten Tomatoes, I was looking, and out of 87 episodes in the entire series, only 2 are rated rotten by critics on Rotten Tomatoes. And so number 1, or the first one, comes in with a great 54%, absolutely rotten. And okay, so if you don't know, on Rotten Tomatoes, the percentage actually only measures on a liked or dislike basis. It has nothing to do with actually rating the episode out of 10 or whatever. It's not oh, it got a 5 out of 10. This episode, which is episode 13 of season 2, it's called Mr. and Mrs. Mixixpidelic. You know what I mean. That episode, it has a 7.5 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes, but the percentage is 54%, which means that only 54% of critics liked it, because it's like I said, on a like or dislike basis. So if you like the episode, you raise its percentage score, but you can still only give it a 6 out of 10. That's why it's important to look at the average scores on Rotten Tomatoes of movies or shows instead of just the percentage, because, it might not be what it seems. With the movie Get Out, it has a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the average score is actually an 8.3. So I just wanted to point that out. I just wanted to explain that really quick. But so Mr. and Mrs. Mixixpidelic, has a 54% on Rotten Tomatoes, but it is rated with a 7.5. Critics called this episode a step back, clunky, problematic. This is the episode where Mon-El and Kara have a screaming match with each other in the middle of Kara's place of work. It is my least favorite episode of Supergirl ever. I hate that episode. I despise it. It's just awful. Straight up, it's awful. And the critics, I think they're right when they say that this episode is a step back and that it's clunky and that it's problematic and it just sucks, dude. So I think it's fair that it's rotten. It's very fair. So number 2, the second episode that's rotten, is episode 6 of season 4, which is called Call to Action. It has a 57% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the rating is a 6.9. And like I said, it's the same thing where like to dislike, it could have a higher percentage, but it could have a lower rating, which is just really interesting. But so critics' issue with this episode is the, quote, buoyant tone of the show, which makes it seem too light to handle the deep political issues that transpire. This is the one where James is really dealing with his guardian thing. I think he came out as guardian, and then Lena was like, haha, I saved you from the attorney and the district attorney, and I saved it. It was I saved the day. And it was obviously a lot to do with Agent Liberty. So I think that's really interesting that this season 4 episode is on this list, because like I said earlier, the end of season 4 is like, people really, really liked the end of season 4, but the beginning, I guess, not so much. The critic score versus the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. So the series as a whole has an 87% not certified as the critical score. And as for the audience score, a 53% overall. This is crazy to me. Like, this is seriously so crazy to me. Like, the fact that the critics, like, genuinely really like this show, but then the audience, like, rates it so poorly, it just is really shocking to me. I feel like it has to do with a lot of different things. First of all, critics on Rotten Tomatoes for television are very hard to come by. There are not a whole lot, and especially like with shows like Supergirl or like any of these CW shows, they're more likely to have like less reviewers. They, especially like CW shows, most shows only have like 7 reviewers on each show, making it easier to get away with having like 100% rating. And like more popular shows almost always have more reviewers and lower scores than smaller shows, simply because more people means more likely to have a difference in opinion. And like 7 people liking your show is way different from 85 people liking your show and 15 of those people disliking it. Yet you're going to have a difference in the rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So for Supergirl, I think if you're taking the time to review Supergirl, I think you genuinely enjoy the show, like especially after 4 seasons. I mean, not always, but especially if you're on Rotten Tomatoes and you're rating every single episode as a critic, maybe you're more likely to be a fan of the show, or to enjoy the episodes. So maybe that's why these scores are higher. But I feel like there's a couple reasons why the audience scores are really low. First of all, well, okay, let's look at season 1 really quick. So season 1 has a 92%, and that is certified fresh. So certified fresh means that you have 20 or more critics reviewing your show. I don't understand that. We'll get to that later. Never mind. Hold on. 92% fresh, certified fresh, out of 72 critics, but the actual rating of the show is a 7.53 out of 10. And, like I said, like to dislike basis on the percentage, but on the actual rating, that's really how everybody feels. Like the average rating is about a 7.5, which pretty much almost exactly matches the audience rating on IMDb, which was a 7.8 for season 1. But the audience rating is where it gets like real different. So on season 1, the audience score is a 54%. And the average rating is a 3.2 out of 5. Out of 3,176 user ratings. So I think for season 1, the reason why the show has such a low audience rating is simply because it had a very wide audience, and at the time, season 1 was kind of a joke. We all saw the Saturday Night Live sketch where Scarlett Johansson made a spoof of the Supergirl trailer and made it a Black Widow trailer. But you know what? Joke's on her, because Supergirl still, you know, she has not gotten a movie yet. We're waiting on it. It's coming out, but like, no movie, Scarlet. Haha, like that was Age of Ultron time. Like, come on. But anyway, so, you know, like, Supergirl was kind of a joke, like, for season 1. And a lot of the time, like, I feel like for these, especially season 1 audience ratings, people, especially, like, I just feel like it has a lot to do with sexism. Like, a lot of fanboys felt like this show was stupid, and that it, like, because especially when you compare it to Arrow and The Flash, it's not as gritty. It was a bit more, it had a lot more romantic drama in it than I think those other shows maybe did. It was definitely campier, you know, it was much more lighthearted, and I feel like fanboys really, like, attack this show, and they still do. But, and you know, that's not to say that men can't enjoy Supergirl, because I know there are so many that do. But I'm saying, out of the 3,176 people that reviewed the show, I feel like a lot of it was, you know, maybe men who were like, why is this not a Superman show? Supergirl is lame. And I feel like that was genuinely the, like, attitude toward the show in season 1. Like, I know that, like, especially me and the rest of the, like, fandom really looks back on season 1 fondly, but I know that a lot of people feel like it was really slow. The pilot has so much criticism around it, where they were like, this pilot is so slow, so boring. So I feel like the attitude was definitely a lot different towards the show than it used to be. So then season 2 also has a 92%, but it's not certified, which I don't understand, because it has 20 critics, but it's not certified. So it has a 7.88 out of 10 overall rating critically. But then audience-wise, it has a 58%. It has a 3.3 out of 5, but only on 1,007 user ratings. And as you'll see, the user rating, like, number drops dramatically, or I guess steadily, throughout these seasons. And like I said before, obviously from CBS to the CW, that's really different. But then also between season 3 and season 4, it drops too. But so I feel like the reason that it's low on this season is because of Mon-El. Because once you strip away, like, those, like, CBS fans that quit watching, then you're left with, like, the hardcore fan base. So the fan base was very, very divided during season 2. And so you either really, really loved it, or you kind of really, really hated it. You were miserable watching the show, and that's how I felt. I mean, I hated to see Kara be sidelined for Mon-El's storyline in season 2. And that's what happened. Like, you know, if you're a Kara-Mel shipper, like, that's what happened. You can't deny that happened. And so I feel like the reason that the user ratings are really low on this season is because people were trying to air their grievances with the show on Rotten Tomatoes. It had less to do with sexism, and I feel like it was more to do with fans of, like, Kara, or, like, fans of Kara and Lena, like Supercorp kind of fans, who were rating the show very low because of Mon-El. But I feel like it has a, you know, because it has a 58, I feel like there was also, like, combat from the Mon-El, like, loving side who loved Mon-El and loved the whole thing with season 2, which I, you know, don't understand. I feel like they, you know, came out as well to rate the season, so it was kind of like opposing forces. So I understand why it only has, like, a 58%, or, you know, like a 3 out of 5, because, you know, I feel like the fan base was really, really, really divided during this season. So then season 3, it has what it deserves, I feel like. I wasn't the biggest fan of season 3. it was kind of a mess, but I mean, I liked it. It had its moments, but you know, it wasn't the best. It has a 77% not certified critically out of 15 critics. It has a 6.9 out of 10 critically. It is the lowest rating that any Supergirl season has ever gotten, 6.9 out of 10, because the lowest it got on IMDb was a 7.5 for season 4. But this 6.9 out of 10 is the lowest that Supergirl has ever been rated out of 15 critics, but the audience rating is a 56%, and it has a 3.2 out of 5, and this season only has 662 ratings. So, you know, like I said, the amount of people rating the show is going down, and I feel like, again, it's probably because it's, you know, about halfway, like 3 out of 5, like 50%, you know. And it's probably because, again, like, the people who hate Mon-El are like, God, get him out of here. Like, this episode sucked because Mon-El, like, was, you know, taking over Kara's story still or whatever. And then the people who love Mon-El are like, this episode, like, is really great because Mon-El is in it. So it's a war between, you know, these two sides. And that's why I feel like, again, it's like 50-50. And then, so for season 4, I'm really intrigued by these numbers for season 4. So it has an 87%, which is certified, but it only has 7 critics. I don't understand. Rotten Tomatoes, can you just follow your own rules? Like, why is season 2 not certified, but then season 4 is certified? Like, season 4 is certified fresh, but 2 and 3 are not, even though they have way more critics. Like, there's only 7 critics on season 4. Anyway, so out of 7 critics, 7.27 out of 10 is the rating for the season, which, again, I feel like it deserves just because of the second half. I agree that the first half was a little rough, definitely. But overall, I really do feel like it was a good season, again, especially because of the second half. But the audience rating is a 43%. It has a 2.6 out of 5 on 490 user ratings. That's really sad. That's like really sad, especially because, you know, like I said, these episodes are really great at the end of the season. I mean, I understand the beginning was really rough, but I feel like it was solid. It was more solid than season 3, at least for me. But yeah, I don't know. I guess because for the other 2 seasons, for season 2 and season 3, I could like put together why I think that it's so divided, or like that the rating is so low. Again, you know, it's because of like Mon-El fans and how divided the Supergirl fandom was at the time. But for season 4, like, I guess I feel like it probably has to do with Lena and James. Like, people who just didn't like Lena and James were probably rating these episodes maybe way lower, especially like Call to Action. I know that was critically rotten. They don't show you the user ratings for each episode, but Call to Action was very much like a Lena and James Lolson centered episode. And that was rotten. So I guess maybe it's just because people are like, you know, Lena doesn't deserve to like be this kind of character where, you know, because really James like was a terrible person for Lena to be with, and like the whole storyline was really just a mess. Like the whole thing was terrible, and then they just like ended it like really quick because they're like, everybody hates this. But yeah, so I don't know. I really cannot like make out like what, like why, like, so let me know what you think. What is your favorite episode of Supergirl? You know, you could tweet me at Televised Pod on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, you could leave me a comment. Anything like that. Just like let me know what your favorite season of Supergirl is, because I just cannot make sense of why season 4 is just rated so low. Like, Because for me, I think that my favorite seasons of Supergirl go season 1, which I put on a pedestal because I have nostalgia for it, but also because it was good. And then season 4, which would be my number 2. And then I think probably season 2 and then season 3. But I mean, let me know if you have a different reason for hating season 2, or if you just you're like, well, I loved season 3. Like, why are you hating? Like, let me know what you think. Because I cannot make sense, because I could see if it had the same rating as season 1 or season 2, with kind of that 3.2, 3.3 range, but for a 2.6, damn. And I feel again, the people probably who are taking the time to rate these episodes, they're probably hardcore fans, maybe really hardcore Supercorp fans, who just really hate Lena and James together, and they really want to make it known that hey, we don't like this, you should fix it. But I think they did fix it halfway through, and now we're stuck in this area where they had a really great second half of the season. James and Lena wasn't a thing anymore. We had the whole Red Daughter storyline really coming to a head. Lena and Kara had amazing moments. There was just some really solid episodes at the end of season 4, yet it's stuck at a 2.6 out of 5. So if you feel so inclined, if you really feel very strongly about season 4 or any of these seasons, you can go to Rotten Tomatoes, make a Rotten Tomatoes account, and review the show. Like I said, same thing with IMDb. It's going to help the show no matter what you rate it, because, having only about 500 ratings on your last season after having almost 700 ratings on the one before is not super great, because it shows a decline of maybe of interest or of viewership. So, go out to Rotten Tomatoes and give it a rating. You don't have to be positive about it, but go give it a rating. Maybe boost those numbers a bit. But yeah, so that's all I got for today. I hope you enjoyed this. I think it's really interesting to think about, especially why, because it's, you can talk about highest rated episodes of Supergirl or whatever, but you have to think about in the fandom and in the dynamics of the show, what was happening at the time, what the climate was like in the fandom or in the fan base. It's really interesting to think about that. Why is, why are crossover episodes so popular? Why are these special episodes of Supergirl so popular? It's all about that, and I think it's really cool. So I hope you enjoyed. You can, let me know if you enjoyed. I think for once Supergirl starts airing, I won't be doing these special episodes or these deep dive episodes of the podcast as much anymore. I hope that's not super disappointing. I'll probably only do one a month instead of twice a month, just because I'll be releasing episodes weekly as Supergirl recaps. So you can, look forward to that once Supergirl starts airing. So I think I'll have this one out. This will be September, and then I'll have another one out in September, and then I will only have one out in October. I have a plan for it. I want to do an examination of the history of horror in pop culture and in movies and in TV, from somebody who doesn't like horror movies. I'm not going to be negative. I'm just very intrigued about the cult aspect of horror and about the staying power that it has and the ability that it has to drive people to the movies no matter what. Even if your movie sucks, even if your horror movie sucks, you're going to make your money back. It's guaranteed. I don't know, it's just insane to me. So I'm very intrigued about that. So I'm going to do an episode about that in October. You can let me know other stuff maybe you want me to talk about, if you have an idea in TV or movies, something you've always been really curious about. I definitely will do my research about it. I'm a TV student, not to to my own horn or anything, but I am going to school for this, so so you can ask me stuff, and hopefully I can answer and be of service to you. But anyway, that's all I have today, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe. You can like this video. You can listen on Spotify. You can give me a rating on Apple Podcasts. That'd be really cool. Let me know what you think of the show. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.